Alright, this is Chat UTD and my reaction to the draw against Fulham yesterday. The biggest observation in terms of the game itself is that I see no marked difference in the performance yesterday to the performances for much of last season. Really underwhelming performance, quite boring, slow paced, slow build up, monotonous, no fluidity, no cohesion, no dynamism in the final third. Lack of ability to create proper chances, and really a very disjointed performance and a very disjointed team, with square pegs in round holes, which I'm going to talk much more about. Something that remains is the fact that this team cannot maintain any intensity in a performance. We saw for the first 5-10 minutes a really bright start, and I'll cover the game in more detail a little bit later. Really bright start, but just like last season, the team can play in periods, but not over a whole game. The team can play perhaps pretty well against one of the big boys, like we did against Arsenal last week. It feels weird saying big boys. We're Man United. We should be the big boys, but you know what I mean. Against Arsenal, one of the better teams last week, we played well. The question I asked in the video after that game was, can we sustain it now? Can we go and put another performance together against Fulham? And the emphatic answer was no, bar the first 5-10 minutes of the game. Just to talk about sort of the squad and the shape of the squad and the glaring issues that are there for everybody to see, which is my take on it. I said in the summer I didn't really. I prefer us to have not gone for two number 10s. I'd have preferred us to have gone for one number 10. The reason I said that was really because I thought we needed to prioritise a striker. Now we've got a striker as well as the two number 10s. But having Bruno and Cunha, it's actually at present, and it's very early days, but it causes more problems than it solves. Because if you buy players for that amount of money, you're going to play them. So what that means is, in keeping Bruno and Mount as well, and really letting go of nobody, you have to get Bruno in the team because he's the captain. He's one of the favourites. We can say that's right or wrong, but he is. So you're playing him in a position that doesn't suit him, and more importantly, is detrimental to the shape of the team. And you're playing Mason Mount because you like him, but you're playing him in a position which doesn't suit him, and again, for me, is probably detrimental to the team. So the knock-on impact is quite important. Is quite wide-reaching. I think when Bruno drops deep on the rest of the squad, when Bruno drops deeper and plays in midfield, there's the logistical issues of him playing there, but also the fact that then you're taking game time away from Ugarte and Mainu, who are midfield players, so they're getting hardly any game time. I'm going to come back to Ugarte in a little bit of time. You put Mount up front, and the striker that you spent £60-odd million on is not starting games. Not to mention the fact that I kind of hinted at it. Bruno there, I'm not saying he can't play there, because there was sometimes last season where he played there to quite decent effect. And I think actually in games where perhaps teams form a low block, maybe his creativity as a deep lying player could be pretty decent. So there's some games where it might be okay, and it would be all right probably if you had an absolute specimen next to him, a complete beast, a phenom, a physical specimen next to him who could dominate the midfield. But we haven't got that. We've got an aging Casemiro. So game after game after game, if we keep doing it, it's not going to work, and we can all see that. The other impact it has is, where's Ahmad going to play? Yesterday he played right wing back, got hooked after an hour, something like that. Josh Zirkzee, where does he play? So you got Mainu, Ugarte, Zirkzee, and Ahmad, whose game time is going to be affected by this. But you've also got, as I say, the shape of the team just doesn't seem right. For me, if you love Mason Mount so much, and you love Bruno Fernandes so much, don't buy two number 10s. Or if you insist on buying two number 10s, you've got to be brave and say, right, well, we need to sell Bruno, we need to sell Mount, and you probably need to sell one of Mainu or Ugarte, and then reinvest that money on midfielders who are actually going to suit this system. From my reading of it, it's Amorim who's led this. It's him that's specifically wanted those two not just one, that he wanted those 2 number 10s because apparently it was going to be a transformative decision. It might well have been if you add other parts of the jigsaw puzzle to it. This is so disjointed. We've got quite an exciting looking front line. We've got a decent back three, and the wing backs are all right. But the middle of the park is a glaring issue. And you see it more obviously as games go by, and it becomes more and more obvious. So you've got to have conviction and say, right, okay, well, we're going to have to let go of players that we like Bruno, like Mount, maybe like Ugarte. I'm playing once a week. I throw Xerxes into that. You might like these lads. They're not going to get game time while you're playing this system and this way. Cheers. At one point yesterday, we had Bruno and Mount in midfield. We scored, actually, while those two were in midfield. But it's just to say, you can't have that as your midfield too in the Premier League. There's no physicality whatsoever. On to other issues. The goalkeeper is a massive issue. Hopefully one we're going to sort out this week. But at set pieces, you were looking at set pieces through your fingers. He looks like a rabbit in the middle of the road, not knowing which way to turn. He's erratic. He's all over the place. He looks worried. He's a number 2 goalkeeper, isn't he? I don't even think he's good enough to be a number 2 goalkeeper, perhaps at United, although that might be a bit harsh. But he's certainly not a number 1 goalkeeper. And Onana, for me, isn't much better. So it's a massive issue. I'm going to talk a bit more about Ugarte as well, and I mentioned him briefly a few moments ago. Ugarte is not an Amorim player. Ten Hag bought him. It's a legacy damage signing, really. When you look at what this midfield needs, can he provide it? Is he physical? Is he big? Is he strong? Does he dominate physically? No. Is he really fast and covers loads and loads of ground really quickly? Not really. Is he good in tight spaces? Is he tidy on the ball? Is he good at ball retention and stuff like that? Not really. Is he good in the air? Does he provide a goal threat? Not really. Does he tenaciously win the ball back and break up play? And is he good with ball recoveries? That's one of the reasons we signed him. But in the Premier League, he's finding it much harder to implement his playing style as opposed to the French League or the Portuguese League, where obviously Amorim did have him at Sporting Lisbon. It's easy to forget because the standards have dropped so low. Ugarte is PSG's sloppy seconds. We paid, upwards of £50 million for him last summer. But don't forget, PSG wanted to sign a midfielder from Benfica. I can't remember if his name was Neves or Nunes, who we desperately wanted but didn't have anywhere near enough money to get. So PSG needed to offload someone to be able to clear it with PSR, that they could go then and spend big on this lad from Benfica. They let us have Ugarte for that reason. He was surplus to requirements at PSG. So I'm just giving you context. It's not a character assassination of the lad. I don't dislike him. But where does he fit? Now, maybe if he played every week and he had the chance to actually play his way into form and get used to the Premier League, maybe it would be different. But again, when is that going to happen? It comes back to the issue I was talking about before, when Bruno Fernandes is having to drop so deep just to get in the team because we signed 2 number 10s. If you love Bruno Fernandes so much, don't sign 2 number 10s. Or sign 2 number 10s and accept the fact that Bruno Fernandes is probably going to have to go, and it frees up space then for the likes of Ugarte to play more than they're playing right now, because Ugarte is never going to progress getting 10 minutes or here or there. He's not good enough, full stop, for me. But you can't really truly judge the lad because he's not had a chance, and he's not going to get a chance. But it's a legacy damage signing. It was Ten Hag signing. So what does he bring that we need in the middle of the park that we don't already have, really, in reality? But it's like in the summer, I'm going to get onto the game in a minute. It's like in the summer, Amorim's like overindulged himself by going, I want Mbeumo, but I also want Cunha, and I also want to keep Bruno, and I really love Mason Mount. And we're not getting rid of Xerxes or Mainu or Ugarte or any of those players either. It's like a kid at Christmas who sees a big bowl of chocolates and absolutely, wolfs them all down and then has a bad tummy ache afterwards. It's like there's consequences to your actions. And at the moment, the consequences, the team looks really, really disjointed, and it doesn't work with Bruno playing in that position. And by the way, I love Bruno Fernandes. I think he's the best player. He's United's best signing for me, probably since Van Persie. He's exactly what he says on the tin. He's done everything he's supposed to have done since coming to this club. He scores goals, he assists goals, he drives the team forward. He's a creative player. Is he perfect? No. But people sort of about drop Bruno. It's not going to happen. Might do against Grimsby, but he's not being dropped. He's the captain. We can say that's right or wrong. It's in terms of the principle of it. He's not getting dropped. So the bigger picture here is, if you wanted to keep him, you shouldn't have got 2 number 10s. Or if you get two number 10s, you should have sold him. Neither of those things are happening, so we're in no man's land. Let's talk a bit about the game. Disappointed again not to see Seshko start. I thought Mount did well, and as Gary Neville observed, Mount was coming back and filling a few holes in midfield as that false nine. False nine don't work in terms of as an attacking threat, I don't think, particularly not in this system. But he covered some of the weaknesses in the midfield, and it was quite obvious when he moved from that position to the deeper position, and then when he went off, that the midfield is a big problem. Comes back to what I was talking about. It's a problem because you've got Fernandes and Casemiro in there. It's a shit show in the middle of the park. So I'm not saying he didn't do all right yesterday, but we bought a player for £60 odd million, a big tall focal point, and he's coming on for a few minutes. Well, no, he came on for 40 minutes, I think, yesterday. Fair enough, it's a bit longer than against Arsenal, but he's got to start. Get him in the team. Pissing about, it's frustrating. I thought we had a really strong start, particularly Cunha had a shot from distance. It was a really good effort. Looked really confident. Lovely move, including which Mason Mount was a big part of when Cunha then hit the post. It's very different if that goes in. And I thought it was a really bright start, but as I touched upon at the start of the video, we don't then have it in us to maintain that intensity, because if we'd have kept that intensity up, pardon me, I think there's no question we'd have got in front and we'd have probably got away with the game, and then you've built on what happened against Arsenal, but never happened. It petered out. I thought Fulham were what they are. Fulham are a better team than Man United. Fulham look like a team with more cohesion, more fluidity, more understanding of what they're doing, more contentment, I'd say. Their body language is better. They look very well drilled. There's some nice sequences in their play. They're more dynamic. They've got a good starting 11. They've got players that come and make an impact off the bench. It's quite a sobering thought and a sobering thing to say, but I think Fulham are a better team than Man United. And that showed yesterday. They were the better team, apart from the first 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes maybe. Maybe that's a bit harsh. Maybe the first half was much of a muchness after the first 10 minutes. The second half, Fulham were much the better team. In that first half, we obviously got the penalty, and I'd put anything on Bruno just putting it low in one of the corners, which is normally what he does. He very rarely smashes it. I don't know why he's chosen to do that yesterday, and he's skied it. It was awful. It's a terrible penalty. On a bad day for Bruno, he was poor, and a big moment in the game. Second half, we weren't looking particularly great. The goal came completely against the run of play. The positive from the goal is a good corner delivery from Mbeumo. It's a blatant foul from Yoro. He's got both hands in the lad's back, but we've got away with one. And obviously it ricochets off their player and goes in, and there's a chance there for us to hang on to something. It never looked like it to happen. Fulham always looked likely to equalise. I just want to mention Diogo Dalot. I thought he was terrible yesterday. Not just his part to play in the equalising goal. I thought his overall performance was poor. He was slow. He really struggled to adjust to the pace of the game, which it wasn't a particularly frantic game, but he looked rusty. He didn't look up to speed, and for the goal, he tries to take a ridiculous touch which isn't on, and I don't think he's good enough to take it anyway. So he's made a mistake. Okay, so you make a mistake. What's your next action as the defender? What's your next action? You go and make up for it. As a fullback, if you've made that mistake, you don't let that cross go in. And he does this weird thing where, it's hard to do it sat down, I know he plays a lot with his hands behind his back, but he goes like this, he bends forward. As the defending player in any passage of play, I was taught as a kid, you make yourself big. You don't make yourself small and off balance like that. Who's taught him that? Is it some kind of weird alternative way of defending? Well, it's shit, it doesn't work. The cross comes in, Bruno's not tracked his man. De Ligt doesn't do well enough. The keeper's got to come out and clear house, but he doesn't do that either. And obviously it's an equalising goal. And to be honest, from there, it only looked like there was going to be one winner. I thought Fulham started taking us apart. They were passing it around us. There was gaps everywhere. We were there for the taking. That being said, the best, I thought the clear-cut chance that happened, that came about in the game was Maguire, and it went just wide, which would have been fluky as anything if we'd have won that game. We didn't deserve to win it, but we nearly did win it with Maguire. Again, weird substitutions. He does this quite a bit. He brings 2 defenders off with 4 minutes to go and brings 2 more defenders on. I can see Maguire. I can see the benefit of that, but he does make some very strange decisions, Amorim. On a plus point, the back 3 struggled a bit at set pieces, but I thought in general the back 3 were pretty decent. Their overall play in the first 2 games of the season has been good. Shaw, De Ligt and Yoro. The issue they've got is they're part of a reverse shit sandwich where the bread is the shit, because behind them they've got a goalkeeper who doesn't know what he's doing, and in front of them they've got a midfield which doesn't function at all. So they're under a lot of pressure. So from set pieces they look very vulnerable, and when the ball breaks through they look vulnerable because there's no midfield in front of them to do what needs to be done. So I actually think they're doing a pretty decent job, but they're being exposed quite a bit. As I say, it's a reverse shit sandwich. Contextually, a draw against Fulham isn't the end of the world. It's away from home. In fact, it's a decent result. But I'm looking at the performance. I'm not looking at the outcome. I'm looking at the performance. And the team's going to get the benefit of the doubt a bit this season in some respects, where we might lose games or draw games, but I'll look at the performance and say, okay, that might not be what we wanted, but we played well, like last week against Arsenal. You have to be fair and say it in reverse as well. That's not the worst result in the world, but the performance was really concerning, I thought. I thought it was tedious. It looked eerily similar to everything we saw last year. And as I said in the summer, there's times when you look at United and you think it almost doesn't seem to matter who we've signed, who the manager is, what the system is. And I've just unpicked why there's loads of reasons why it didn't work yesterday. But there is that feeling sometimes around the place where any feel-good factor never seems to be maintained or built upon. It just feels broken. And this is 2 games into the season, but I guess I'm just battle-weary from year after year after year of us just not being what I know I would like us to be, I suppose. It left us with more questions than answers, that game. And just moving on to other stuff, it does look like we're going to sign Lemens, the young keeper from Antwerp. He's 23, 24, I think. Very well thought of, apparently potential to be one of the best goalkeepers in Europe in the next few years. Only 1 or 2 years experience of first team football, but if we're going to buy him, which I think we will, I'd play him. I'd play him week in, week out. I think that Onana's on the bench again, or on the bench yesterday. The manager in that respect, I think, sending a bit of a message. He doesn't rate him, and I don't blame him. And I think whether Onana stays or goes, I think Lemens has to come in and get a chance. And he'll make mistakes, and he's young and he's got to adjust, but it's not David De Gea coming in and being expected to win Premier League titles. It's a guy coming in where the standards have dropped so low that people are talking about 8th and 9th as being a decent season. So there's always pressure for a Manchester United goalkeeper, particularly when they're young, but there's probably not as much pressure for him as there would be in other eras if he came and joined United. So I think he's got to sign, which I think he will, and then the next thing is I think he's got to play, which I'm not sure whether he will or not. And the midfield thing is just massively concerning, because we're not going to sell Bruno Fernandes. No one's going to come and take Casemiro. So even if we did buy someone, you've still got the issue then of who goes out of the team, because Bruno's not going to go. Maybe it would be Casemiro, I suppose. But I look at the United. We were going to spend 100 and whatever million pounds on Belieber, if you believe what we were told. Our scouting department covers the whole world. I don't believe that there is not some 6'4" monster who can dominate a midfield, who's maybe not even technically that good, but can just look after the ball and do all the basic things right and sit in the midfield and dominate and make it difficult to get past him. When you scour France, Africa, South America, Eastern Europe, Serbia, Belgium, wherever. I know Belgium's not part of Eastern Europe. You're not telling me there's not some absolute beast out there that can't come in and do a better job than what's being done now. Forget 100 million quid. Brighton are a great example. Brighton unearth these players every 2 or 3 years. We're not flush with infinite amounts of money anymore, so our scouting department's got to do better. Don't have to be a household name, just go and find someone. Don't even have to be that good for what we need. Just go and get someone who can be a bit of a destroyer in the middle of the park. And I hear people say about Amorim, it's unfair to judge him because he hasn't got that player I just mentioned then, and he ain't got a goalkeeper, and he should have those players. Join the club, mate. When has the last 3 or 4 Man United managers ever had precisely what they wanted? At Man United, you don't get what you want, you get what you're given. And you have to make the best of it. That's life under the Glazers and now Ineos. And I've got a channel on which in every video I end it with Glazers out, and I mean it with every fibre of my being. I despise them. And they shouldn't run the club. We need better owners. We do, but we haven't got them. We're not going to get them. So the reality for a Man United manager is, within these circumstances, which I appreciate are challenging, you've got to be good enough to operate within those circumstances. You've got to be adaptable. You've got to have tactical innovation and ingenuity, and you've got to be able to work with what you've got. Is Amorim showing any sign at the moment that he can do that? For me, no, he's not. And nor did Ten Hag beyond the first season. But when results are so bad as they are, and they are bad, people are trying to sweep last season under the carpet. You can't. There's legacy damage from last season. There's credibility damage from last season. When results are so bad, you can't be making the strange decisions that he's making because he's got no credibility in the bank. It just draws more attention to himself in a way that's obviously really negative. I said about Ineos when it was nearly 2 years ago now, when it was announced that they were going to be the people to come in alongside the Glazers instead of a full takeover. I said that there's so many factors against us here that the people coming in they're going to have to be perfect. And even then, we're limited as to what we can achieve. But they're going to have to make perfect decisions, and they haven't done that. And no one makes perfect decisions ever, but people are human. It's similar for Amorim. When you're in the situation you're in at Man United, you've got to make sure that everything you do is on point, because there's so many factors that are against you. So you can't be making bizarre decisions and doing weird shit and putting square pegs in round holes and doing things that every single Manchester United fan can tell you won't work. And yet he does. And he's making mistakes he can't afford to make because there's already enough stuff that's going against us. And look, I like him. I think he's got a lot about him. But I hear people sort of say, with what he did with the midfield yesterday, is he sending a message to the board to say you're going to have to get me a midfielder? Managers don't operate that way. Mourinho might have done because he was spiteful and self-centered. Amorim's not doing that. Amorim's picking teams that he thinks are going to win the game. And with the goalkeeper thing, that's slightly different. There's nothing in it between Bayindir and Onana. So he might be making a point to Onana, but it's not at the expense of the team because there's nothing in it. Neither of them are better than the other one. But he's picking the rest of that team because he thinks it can win the game. And the worry is he's picking it probably because he's got favourites like Bruno, like Mount, like Diogo Dalot coming on. Bring it back to what I said towards the start. If you love Mason Mount so much, you shouldn't have bought 2 number 10s. If you love Bruno Fernandes so much, you shouldn't have bought 2 number 10s. If you insisted on buying 2 number 10s, you have to accept that those two either become bit part players, which for Mount's a lot easier than Fernandes, or you have to sell both of them. Because the knock-on effect is massive, not just in the shape of the team, but in playing time for other players who are just going to stagnate, and that breeds contempt within the dressing room. 2 games in, loads can change, but on the evidence that I've seen so far, I think we could be in for a bit of a long season. What happens between now and the end and next week on Monday when the transfer window closes is significant, because as I said a couple of weeks ago in my season preview, if it stays as is, I see us finishing mid-table. I've seen nothing to change my mind as yet. Nice one. Glazers out.